Some CBC News analysis for you now that shows how mass vaccinations in Canada are protecting the country's most vulnerable. Right now, Canada is passing another big milestone in its vaccination drive. More than 12 million Canadians have received now at least one dose. The country is also closing in on nearly 1 million people fully vaccinated. Here's another important metric. More than 86% of Canadians over the age of 80 have had at least one dose of the vaccines. Lauren Pelly is with us from Toronto this morning, part of the CBC News team behind that new analysis. Lauren, we know that Canada still has a long way to go overall, but are we starting to see mass vaccinations paying off?
Well, that's the thing, Heather. We do have a long way to go. We got off to this sluggish start, but as you said, things are ramping up among some of these really vulnerable groups. Right now, close to a third of all Canadians have been given at least one dose. And as you said, many of those people are those at really high risk of those dire outcomes if they were to get COVID-19. So seniors, long-term care residents, healthcare staff who are exposed day in and day out. And we're seeing the start of the impact of all of that. Even though we're in a third wave of cases in Canada, cases, hospitalizations, and deaths among the oldest Canadians are really dropping this time around. We analyzed countrywide vaccination data from the Public Health Agency of Canada to find this positive trend. And what we saw was that by February, Canada had hit around 10% of 80 and up residents getting at least one dose. After that point, cases plummeted for that age group, even as they started ticking upward again for younger adults. As you can see on our chart here, that blue line starting to go up and the red line just dropping right down and leveling off. Among seniors, both hospitalizations and deaths also dropped in a bigger way. We showed those numbers to infectious disease specialist Dr. Zain Chagla, who agreed that this really does offer a glimmer of hope.
The fact right now is, deaths in Canada aren't as high as what would be expected with the community activity ongoing. And I think you're seeing it, right? The populations that were vaccinated early. I mean, we know the long-term care sector, thank God, has not been something we've dealt with during this wave. These are the effects of the vaccines that were given in that first priority that are actually going into the appropriate arms. So it is good news that these vaccines work and they're protecting some of the more vulnerable people throughout this pandemic.
Dr. Chagla, as you spoke to him doing this analysis, Lauren, certainly Canada has taken a while to get up to speed, and many Canadians have been looking south of the border to get a sense of what might be to come here. So what can we look forward to as Canadians as the vaccination rate ramps up here?
Well, Heather, I don't know about you, but I have friends in the States, and it has been interesting seeing people younger and younger getting vaccinated and having those pangs of, when are we going to get there? The UK, Israel, same thing. They are farther ahead than we are in their vaccination campaigns. But when you look south of the border, the latest data shows what we have to look forward to in the future. COVID-19 hospitalizations among older Americans have plunged more than 70% since the start of the year, and deaths in that age group are dropping as well. In fact, COVID-19 deaths among people of all ages in the U.S. have dropped to around 700 per day on average, and that's compared to a peak of more than 3,400 daily in just mid-January. So what we're seeing in the States is exactly what medical experts have been hoping for: high rates of vaccinations pushing those dire outcomes down. Here in Canada, the Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, said that if we get at least 75% of Canadians vaccinated with at least one dose in the months ahead, she's hopeful that some of the regions still under lockdowns could start lifting those restrictions this summer. So we are in for some better days ahead. Heather?
Lauren, thank you very much. Lauren Pelly from Toronto.